Piri Reis Map. In 1929, inside the quiet halls of Istanbul's Topkapi Palace, a librarian opened a drawer that hadn't been disturbed in centuries. Inside was a fragment of a map, painted on gazelle skin, faded, fragile, and dangerous to history. It had been created in 1513 by an Ottoman admiral named Piri Reis. At first glance, it looks familiar. The coastlines of Europe and Africa, the Atlantic Ocean, a surprisingly precise outline of Brazil, mapped decades before it should have been fully understood. But then your eyes drift south. Attached to the bottom of South America is another coastline. Long, cold, and officially impossible. According to modern history, no one had seen it. That coastline matches Antarctica. More specifically, it appears to show Queen Maud Land, a region buried today beneath thousands of feet of ice. Here's the problem. The map doesn't show Antarctica covered in ice. It shows the land beneath. Mountain contours, coastal shapes, geography that shouldn't be visible without radar, satellites, or seismic scanning. And yet, in 1949, over 400 years later, a Swedish, British, and Norwegian expedition conducted seismic surveys beneath Antarctica's ice. Their findings aligned almost perfectly with what Piri Reis had drawn centuries earlier. Even more unsettling, Piri Reis never claimed to be a great explorer. He called himself a compiler. On the map itself, he wrote that it was based on around 20 older source charts, some from the era of Alexander the Great, one allegedly captured from Christopher Columbus himself. Ancient knowledge, stitched together. The academic explanation tries to defuse the mystery. They argue the Antarctica coastline is actually South America, Argentina, and Chile, stretched, twisted, and distorted to fit the parchment. A simple cartographic mistake. But that explanation didn't satisfy everyone. In 1960, the U.S. Air Force's cartographic unit studied the map in detail. Their conclusion was blunt. The most logical interpretation was that the map showed a real, ice-free Antarctic coastline, which leaves us with an uncomfortable question. If Antarctica was mapped without ice, who saw it that way? And how many other ancient maps might be preserving a vision of Earth from a time science says no one was there? Haji Ahmed World Map. Let's start at the edge of the last ice age. Picture the planet locked in white silence. Sea levels plunge hundreds of feet. Glaciers dominate the northern hemisphere. And between Siberia and Alaska, something incredible appears. A massive stretch of land, more than 600 miles wide. A frozen plain connecting two continents. For nomadic tribes in Siberia, this isn't a catastrophe. It's an invitation. They follow mammoths across the tundra, trail bison through endless grasslands. Not in a single journey, but over thousands of years. This lost world is known as Beringia, a natural corridor into the Americas. Then the ice retreats. The oceans rise. And around 11,000 years ago, the land bridge disappears beneath the waves of the Bering Strait. No cities ever stood on it. No written records described it. By all logic, it should have vanished from human memory forever. And yet it didn't. In 1559, an Ottoman cartographer named Haji Ahmed published a world map in Venice. Its heart-shaped design was striking on its own. But the real shock waits in the far north. There, clearly drawn, is a wide land bridge connecting Asia and North America. Not a vague sketch, not a mythical guess, a specific geological feature, exactly where Beringia once existed. The problem is timing. By Ahmed's era, that land had been gone for over 11 millennia, long before writing, long before empires, long before the first pyramids rose from the sand. He wasn't working with modern science. No satellites, no sonar, no Ice Age models. So how did he know? Ahmed claimed he copied older sources, maps already ancient in his own time, relics of forgotten knowledge, preserved and recopied across centuries. Skeptics argue it was guesswork, that early cartographers filled unknown spaces with educated imagination, just as they once filled oceans with sea monsters. But the shape is too deliberate, too accurate, too close to what modern geology later confirmed. Which leads to a disturbing question. What if some ancient maps aren't speculative at all, but echoes of a world humanity once knew? And if a vanished continent could survive on paper for thousands of years, what other lost places might ancient maps still be quietly revealing? Oronce Finé World Map. Imagine pulling a forgotten volume from an old library shelf. The pages crackle. The ink is faded, and inside is a world map drawn in 1531 by a respected French mathematician and cartographer named Oronce Finé. At first, nothing feels unusual. Europe, Africa, Asia. Then your eyes drop to the bottom of the page. There, filling the southern edge of the world, is a massive continent. This alone isn't shocking. In the 16th century, many scholars believed in Terra Australis, a theoretical southern land meant to balance the globe. But then you look closer, and the chill sets in. This continent isn't abstract. It isn't symbolic. It has rivers, long, branching waterways flowing toward the sea, deep valleys carved through the land, a sharply defined coastline. Most disturbing of all, there's no ice. What Oronce Finé drew looks like a living continent, not a frozen wasteland. Today, we call that land Antarctica. Finé's map predates Antarctica's official discovery by nearly 300 years. Yet it appears to show the continent's full landmass, including regions now buried beneath miles of ice. The Ross Sea, the Weddell Sea, mountain ranges and river systems that modern science only identified centuries later using radar and seismic imaging. Historians like Charles Hapgood argued that when you adjust for Finé's projection, the accuracy becomes unsettling. Not perfect, but far too specific to dismiss. It suggests the source material came from a time when Antarctica's coastline wasn't frozen, a condition that hasn't existed for thousands, possibly millions of years. A ghost of a temperate world, preserved on parchment. Critics push back hard. They point out that to make the map line up, you have to rotate it, resize it, shift the poles. They argue Finé was simply sketching a hypothetical continent, and any resemblance is coincidence, selectively interpreted by modern enthusiasts. But here's the problem. Oronce Finé wasn't guessing. He was a mathematician, a precision thinker. His heart-shaped cordiform projection was cutting edge for its time. So how could a purely speculative continent accidentally include such specific features? The river systems, the inlets, the coastline itself. Was this really imagination run wild? Or is this exactly what it appears to be? An echo of an ancient survey of a lost, ice-free world, waiting centuries for science to catch up? Buache Antarctic Map. Fast forward 2 centuries. The southern edge of the world is still a mystery, a blank space. A theory known as Terra Australis, sketched more from imagination than evidence. Then, in 1737, France's official royal geographer steps into the unknown. His name is Philippe Buache, and instead of filling the south with vague coastlines or artistic guesswork, Buache does something no one expects. He splits the continent in two. On his map, published in 1739, Antarctica isn't a single frozen landmass. It's shown as 2 vast islands, separated by a wide, navigable sea. At the time, this made no sense. Antarctica hadn't even been confirmed to exist yet. No one had crossed its ice. No one had seen beneath it. And yet Buache confidently drew an inner sea cutting straight through the continent. Pure speculation, critics said. But history wasn't finished with his map. In 1958, during the International Geophysical Year, scientists finally pierced Antarctica's ice using seismic surveys. For the first time, they saw the bedrock below. And what they found was astonishing. Antarctica isn't one solid continent. Its bedrock is divided into 2 massive landmasses, separated by the Transantarctic Mountains, with a deep basin between them, one that would flood into a sea if the ice were removed. Exactly what Buache had drawn over 200 years earlier. Like earlier cartographers, Buache claimed he relied on older source maps, documents whose origins were already lost in his time. Skeptics argue he was theorizing, that he believed icebergs must form from a central frozen sea, and his map was a scientific guess based on flawed 18th century assumptions. In fact, Buache even labeled the inner sea as conjectural. But here's the problem. How does a guess, based on incorrect science, end up matching seismic data uncovered 2 centuries later? At what point does speculation stop looking like theory and start looking like memory? Because Buache's map doesn't feel like a hypothesis. It feels like a snapshot of a world that existed long before ice erased it. And if ancient knowledge could predict what lay beneath Antarctica, what else might be hiding under maps we still call imaginary? Gerardus Mercator World Map. You already know his work, even if you don't recognize his name. Every classroom map, every navigation chart, every globe that stretches the poles. They all trace back to Gerardus Mercator. In 1569, Mercator introduced the projection that became the backbone of modern cartography. He was precise, mathematical, obsessively careful, not a man known for guesswork. And yet, at the very bottom of his legendary world map, in a place no European had ever seen, he drew a continent. Mercator labeled it Terra Australis Incognita, the unknown southern land. But he didn't leave it as a vague shadow or symbolic outline. He gave it shape, a defined coastline, distinct contours, hints of structure where there should have been nothing but imagination. And when modern researchers overlay Mercator's southern land with Antarctica, the resemblance is unsettling. The curve of the coast, the proportions, even suggestions of mountain ranges, features we didn't confirm until the 20th century, using ice-penetrating radar to see beneath miles of frozen darkness. Mercator himself offered an explanation. He said his mission was to show what parts of the world were known to the ancients, not to speculate, but to preserve. In other words, he wasn't inventing geography. He was copying it. The mainstream view dismisses this as philosophy, not evidence. Mercator, they say, was simply following an ancient Greek idea that a massive southern continent must exist to balance the land in the north. Any details? Pure conjecture. But that explanation strains under pressure. Because coincidences don't usually align this well. They don't echo subglacial mountain chains. They don't mirror coastlines hidden beneath ice for thousands of years. Which leaves us facing two uncomfortable possibilities. Either Mercator was astonishingly lucky, or he had access to source maps inherited from a civilization that charted Antarctica when it wasn't frozen solid. And if that's true, then the maps we trust most may be quietly preserving knowledge from a world far older than our own. Zeno Map. Imagine a story whispered through generations of a powerful Venetian family. A tale of two brothers, Niccolo and Antonio Zeno, who, more than a century before Columbus, sailed into the dark, uncertain waters of the North Atlantic. They spoke of strange islands, hostile encounters, foreign kingdoms no European map had ever recorded. For decades, it was dismissed as family mythology, until a descendant went digging. In a forgotten corner of the Zeno estate, he uncovered a bundle of old letters and a battered, half-decayed map. In 1558, he published them. What emerged became known as the Zeno Map, one of the most controversial charts ever made. At first glance, it looks impressive but flawed. The North Atlantic is filled with detail. Islands appear where none should exist. Places like Friesland, a landmass modern geography insists was never real. That alone is enough for many scholars to call it fiction. But then there's Greenland, and that's where everything breaks down. In the 16th century, Greenland was known only as a jagged, icy coastline. Its interior was completely unknown, hidden beneath an immense glacier no one could penetrate. Yet the Zeno Map shows Greenland in startling detail. Mountains stretch inland. Rivers snake through valleys. The land has depth, structure, and form. And there's no ice cap. What's drawn looks eerily similar to what modern scientists have discovered beneath Greenland's ice, using satellite imaging and ice-penetrating radar centuries later. The map depicts Greenland as it may have existed during a much warmer climatic era, before the Little Ice Age, possibly long before recorded history altogether. Most historians dismiss the Zeno Map as an elaborate hoax, a fabrication designed to elevate the family's prestige. The Phantom Islands are cited as proof. Case closed. And yet, that ice-free Greenland refuses to go away. Because if this was a forgery, it raises an impossible question. How did a 16th century hoaxer create a topographical layout of subglacial Greenland that so closely mirrors reality? The Zeno Map is either an audacious fantasy or a preserved snapshot of a world shaped by a climate we weren't supposed to know about. And if ancient maps can remember landscapes erased by ice, what else might they be quietly waiting to reveal? Cantino Planisphere. The year is 1502. Lisbon is the nerve center of a global intelligence war. Portugal has cracked the code of ocean travel. New sea routes, new continents, and that knowledge is treated like a weapon. Maps are classified. Leaking them to foreigners is treason, punishable by death. Into this city of spies walks an Italian agent named Alberto Cantino. Officially, he's there to buy horses for the Duke of Ferrara. Unofficially, he has one mission: steal the most valuable object on Earth. A complete, up-to-date map of the world. For 12 gold ducats, a fortune at the time, Cantino secretly commissions a Portuguese cartographer. The map is smuggled out of Lisbon piece by piece, hidden from royal eyes. What emerges is breathtaking. The Cantino Planisphere is the earliest surviving map to record Portugal's secret discoveries. Africa's coastline rendered with razor precision. India placed with shocking confidence. But it's the western edge of the map that changes everything. There, across the Atlantic, lie the Caribbean islands. And then, something no one expects. A long, continuous coastline, ending in a distinctive peninsula. It's unmistakable. Florida. This is 5 years before Waldseemüller's famous map. 11 years before Juan Ponce de Leon officially discovers Florida in 1513. The shape isn't vague. It isn't symbolic. It looks surveyed, measured, known. Historians suggest the explanation isn't supernatural, just deeply inconvenient. That unknown Portuguese, or possibly Spanish, navigators reached these lands earlier and quietly mapped them. No announcements. No glory. Their voyages were classified, buried, erased. If that's true, the Cantino map isn't impossible. It's evidence. Proof that the age of discovery we were taught is incomplete. A carefully cleaned-up timeline hiding secret missions, stolen maps, and knowledge traded in shadows. And if entire coastlines could be known years before their official discovery, what other truths might history have quietly decided not to tell us? Martin Waldseemüller World Map. Imagine yourself in Europe, 1507. The world feels vast, unknown, thrillingly mysterious. For centuries, scholars believed there were only 3 continents: Europe, Asia, Africa. Then explorers like Columbus and Vespucci bring shocking news. A new land lies across the Atlantic. But what is it? A part of Asia? Or something entirely different? A German cartographer named Martin Waldseemüller takes on the monumental task of updating the world map. His creation, the Universalis Cosmographia, is a masterpiece of early cartography. But it contains 2 remarkable impossibilities. First, it is the first map ever to label the new lands America, honoring Vespucci. Second, and far more baffling, it depicts this new continent as entirely separate from Asia. Across a vast ocean, the Pacific, a problem arises. The first European to officially reach the Pacific was Vasco Núñez de Balboa in 1513, 6 years after this map was published. As if that weren't enough, Waldseemüller draws the western coast of South America with astonishing accuracy. Its width, its shape, precise in ways historians say he shouldn't have known. Where did this information come from? Academics argue that Waldseemüller made a brilliant, intuitive leap. Vespucci's reports described lands so different from known Asia that he deduced they must be separate. A stroke of genius. A lucky guess. But it doesn't explain the uncanny precision of the coastline. Waldseemüller himself admits he compiled his map from multiple sources, including unknown Portuguese charts. So we are left wondering, was this map merely the work of extraordinary reasoning? Or is it the echo of a lost voyage, recorded in secrecy, from explorers history forgot? Portolan Chart. Close your eyes and picture Great Britain. The jagged coastline. Rolling green hills. Familiar, comfortable. Now, rewind the clock 12,000 years. Much of the island is buried under colossal ice sheets. Remnants of the last ice age. Coastlines are reshaped. The land itself bent and compressed beneath unimaginable weight. A world no human has seen. One that exists only in geological reconstructions. Or so we thought. In 1487, a cryptographer in Alexandria named Yehudi Ibn Ben-Zera creates a Portolan Chart. Its depiction of the Mediterranean and Aegean seas is impressively precise. But it's his rendering of northern Europe that truly stuns. The British Isles, Scandinavia, drawn with strange, subtle features that seem to echo the remnants of glacial ice. Shorelines shaped by melting ice. Edges of ice sheets hovering over parts of Britain. Contours lost to history thousands of years before Ben-Zera was born. How could a 15th century mapmaker, living decades before Columbus, possess knowledge of Ice Age geography? It's as if he held a geological survey from the deep past. Skeptics insist these features are simple errors. Misinterpreted coasts. Artistic flourishes. typical guesswork of pre-modern cartographers. Yet, the alignment with actual glacial patterns is uncanny. Could it be possible that ancient civilizations preserved knowledge of deep-time geography, passed it down through generations, until it surfaced centuries later, unknowingly copied by a mapmaker who had no idea the land he drew had been buried under ice? And if this knowledge survived so long in secrecy, what else from the distant past might ancient maps be quietly revealing? Vinland Map. Imagine it's 1957. A rare book dealer steps into a library. Among dusty shelves, he finds a slim, unassuming volume. Inside is a world map, ink on parchment. Simple at first glance. But look closer, and the impossible appears. In the upper left, beyond Greenland, sits a large island, Vinland Insula, the island of Vinland. A caption claims the Norse, led by Leif Erikson, discovered it centuries earlier. If genuine, it would rewrite history. The first known map of North America. Evidence that Vikings charted the continent long before Columbus set sail. The map bursts into public attention in 1965, hailed as a pre-Columbian artifact. Carbon dating places the parchment around 1440, perfectly fitting the supposed timeline. It shows Europe, Asia, Greenland, and most strikingly, Finland itself. The landmass corresponds to Newfoundland, later confirmed by Norse settlement at Oronce Meadows. For decades, the map was revered, a cartographic holy grail, a secret window into knowledge of the New World long before its official discovery. Then came the twist. In 2021, Yale University conducted a comprehensive analysis. The verdict? Forgery. The ink contains titanium dioxide, first commercially produced in the 1920s. Someone had taken an authentic 15th century parchment and crafted a brilliant deception. But here's the tantalizing mystery. Why create such a flawless forgery? Why depict Vinland with such precision, centuries before Newfoundland was unearthed by archaeologists? It's a fake, and yet it hints at knowledge, intent, and secrets that stretch far beyond the map itself. A creation designed to deceive, yet somehow echoing truths history hadn't yet uncovered. If these ancient maps can hide secrets that science still can't explain, imagine what else history is keeping from us. Subscribe to Strange Wise and join us as we uncover the mysteries buried in time, the stories history forgot, and the knowledge they tried to erase. Hit the bell, because the truth is stranger than you think, and we're just getting started.